So in the last video, we actually finished setting up our entire GUI, our tip calculator program. But if you remember, it didn't do anything. When we pressed the button, nothing happened. So in this video, we're actually going to make that work. We're going to make it be a functioning tip calculator. And in order to do that, we actually need to create a function that's going to do the calculation for us. So I'm going to go to the top of the program, and I'm going to create a function called calculate cost per person. And this function is going to take no parameters, and it's actually not going to return anything. It's going to do all the updating from within the function. I'm going to do a quick document string, and I'm going to say that the amount per person is going to equal the total cost times the tip amount divided by 100, so we can make it a percent, plus the total cost again, and I know there's probably easier ways to do this, but I'm just spelling everything out, divided by the number of people. And I'm actually going to return nothing. So this is just going to tell the reader how I'm calculating the amount per person. Well, let's go ahead and calculate that out. So the first thing I need to do is retrieve the information from some of these things. So the first thing I'm going to get, I want to know the cost of the meal. And if we remember, we set up a variable called cost, and we assigned that to our meal cost entry field. The text variable is cost. So what I want to do, let me make this meal, is I want to get the contents of that variable. So I'm going to use the cost variable, and I'm going to get that. So get is a very common method to get something from a widget. And because I'm going to assume that this is a decimal number, it'll be like $24.13, or some amount of money and some amount of cents. I want to convert it to a float. And we've seen that many, many times before. All right, the next piece of information I want to get is the tip. So I'm going to say the tip equals tip amount dot get, and the tip amount was an integer, okay, an int var from the scale, right? So the variable tip amount. So whatever the person puts on that scale is what's going to be returned here when I get that tip amount. And then I'm going to divide it by 100 to get the percent. So if I use a 15% tip, it'll be 0.15. The number of diners is going to equal the number of diners variable get. Remember, those were the series of radio buttons. So all these radio buttons have the variable number of diners. Whichever one I select, when I get it, it returns this value. So if the radio button 3 is selected, the value of the number of diners variable is 3, and that would be what I would get up here. Now let's calculate the total. So the total is going to equal the cost of the meal times the tip plus the cost of the meal again, divided by the number of diners. And so I took the information from my different entry fields and radio buttons and sliders, I calculated the total cost, and now I need to show that to the user. So what that means, remember we created a label down here, a text label value, where the text variable is final amount per person. When I click the button, I want this to be updated. So now I'll say final amount per person. And remember, when I wanted to get information, I use get. This time I want to set information. And I'm going to set this label to have the value of total. So there it is, our final function. It calculates the tip amount, updates the label. Let's go ahead and run this. So I'll put in my, let's just do one that I know is going to be the answer. I'll do a $20 meal. I'll do a 20% tip. And when I press my calculate tip button, actually let me put one diner. Calculate tip button, nothing happens. And that's because we haven't told the button what function to run. So down here on our calculate button, we have to say, what are you going to do when you're clicked? So we'll say the command equals, and the name of our function is calculate cost per person. And notice that it puts in the parentheses for us. When we're doing the command as part of a button, we actually don't include the parentheses with the function. So now if we run this, we'll put our $20 in here. We will put one person. The tip will be 20% because we can do the calculator in our head. The total cost should be about $24. Now if I calculate tip, the field is updated with $24. If I know it's 2 people, it's $12. 3 people, $8. So you can see our calculation is working as we expected. There's a couple issues. One is this should probably be formatted for currency. We haven't done any kind of checking to see what happens if none of the diner buttons is selected, what happens if the field is blank. So there are some things that we can do that I will leave up to you as an exercise to deal with later. But the one last thing we're going to do in our next video is make this look a little bit better. Right now things aren't lined up, things are kind of off to the side. We can make this look a lot nicer. So that's what we'll do in our final video on GUIs.